Alrighty. Well, it is. What is it? What is it? It's 10 o'clock, and it is Tuesday, February the 3rd, in the year of our Lord, 2026. Yeah, my goodness, hey? Anyway, funny, I was talking to my cat lady last night. I took a bunch of Rocky's things over to her, a bunch of treats and things. I didn't realize how many bags of treats I had around here. I bought Rocky a lot of treats. He couldn't possibly have eaten all the treats I bought him in a lifetime. So I've been basically distributing things, places where I figured they'll be needed. And of course, my cat lady, she's got different people she helps, and she's got different people, and she's got cats there too that she looks after. And so I give her a basket full of stuff anyway. And along with there's a full bottle of Medicam, which is the painkiller Rocky was on, and she actually bought that. So I mean that is actually her property, really. So she was already aware I was going to give her that back because I told her I would. She didn't ask for it, but I did give it back to her. The other stuff, the oh, the my goodness, the other stuff there, the treats and whatnot, I just put those in the basket with the Medicam and everything because really, uh, like I say, I know it'll all go to good causes, and there'll be people that she can distribute that stuff to who maybe are having a hard time right now and maybe have cats and can't afford to buy little extras like that for them. And I'm sure the cat she's looking after will get some too. Anyway, but we were talking, we have good conversations, me and her do. We don't agree about everything. I mean, she's a lot more liberal than I am in her political viewpoint. And, she's a believer in the MAID program and all that stuff. But we have conversations, and there's a mutual respect there, so we can have a good dialogue. But, I can tell you a few things, though. I am against the MAID program. I want to be clear about that, but not for the reasons you may think. Like I can tell you, my main concern with it is the potential for abuse. I can understand somebody who's in agony and it's not going to stop wanting that program. That makes sense to me. And I can understand the argument that it's not fair to deprive that person of the program. But here's the issue I have. I see it being expanded to more and more people. And I see it being expanded, for example, to young, healthy people who are physically healthy, but they're mentally ill. And, the problem there is that there's also a for-profit motive with the organ harvesting. Because these people, the organs that are harvested from them are sold. They're sold by our system, by our government, and that money stays with our system. So there's a profit incentive. It costs money to treat somebody, but you can kill them for relatively little, and then if you can harvest their organs and sell them, there's a lot of profit there. And I don't care what people think. People can say, well, the medical profession are all saints and angels, and they're above reproach and would never do that. That isn't true. I've had dealings enough with the medical profession to know that isn't true. There are some awfully corrupt people, and I'm not saying everybody in the medical profession is horrible, but there are a lot that are. And I mean, and the government, of course, you can't trust the government as far as you can throw it. The government's always working some angle, basically to bend you over. You know, it really is. They're always working some angle to do that to you. And so the thing with me is, I'll tell you something. Back in 2022, my kidneys quit working, and I did nearly die. And for a solid week here, I was in agony. I was walking back and forth in the field. I had to keep moving because if I stopped moving, um, the pain would overwhelm me. I'd just walk and walk and walk. In the daytime, I walked back and forth in the field out here, walked right back to the tree line, and then came right back again. And I just did that. Wore a path, walking back and forth in the field. And at night, I'd walk the length of this camper, just back and forth, back and forth. And every so often, I would get so exhausted that I'd pass out. Um, but, and then when I came to, I'd be in agony still, and I'd walk and walk, and this is what I was doing. And I understood from having that experience why some people would opt for MAID, because I can't imagine living like that for months on end, or even years, and it never ends. And that's your life. You're either unconscious or you're in agony. What an awful thing. What an awful way to live. So I do understand it. And I can't say that I don't get it, because I do. But what I'm seeing is it gradually being expanded to more and more, and and then I'm seeing how there's a profit incentive there with the organ harvesting. And I'm concerned about it, and I'm afraid even that they're going to start making it mandatory. And those are my concerns, and she understands that. Like I think she kind of halfways agrees with me about that. Like she can understand where I'm coming from, at least with it, and I can understand where she's coming from too. She's 84 years old. She's now in the final stretch of her life, any way you look at it. She's doing well for somebody her age, but she's still an 84-year-old woman. She knows that she's in the last days, that something's going to happen. And she doesn't know what that something will be. She doesn't know if something's going to happen to her that'll just take her out before she knows what hit her, or if she's going to end up, disabled, a vegetable, in just constant searing, mind-numbing agony, or what. She has no idea how she's going to leave this world, but she knows it's coming, and it's coming fairly soon. And that's got to be kind of a frightening thing. Especially, like, this lady's an atheist, so for her, she believes that when the lights go out, that's it. There is nothing else beyond that. You cease to exist. So it's not like she has in her mind the idea that she's going to go to heaven or anything like that, that she's going to be in some state of eternal bliss with all her deceased loved ones and all that. That she doesn't believe that's going to happen. She believes that when she dies, she's going to get a pine box and 6 feet of dirt. And so, again, she's not looking forward to anything, She's just living a day at a time, and it's like, well, today I'm not in agony, and I've got all my marbles, and I can get around, and I can do some things. I can't do what I used to do, but I can still do something. And so that's what I'm going to do today. And that's how she lives every day of her life now. That's how she lives. She's just a day at a time, And she's not, but she does know that at some point something's going to happen. And, it's just got to be there got to be some fear there, not knowing just what that will be and how that's going to affect her. And I feel bad knowing that, that she has that hanging over her head. We all have it hanging over our head. If nothing else gets us first, we're going to end up being her age and facing the same sort of a thing, wondering when is the thing coming that's going to take me out, and what's that thing going to be, and how is it going to do it, how much suffering am I going to have to endure? So again, I get all that, and I can see some value in the MAID program in that respect. The issue I have with it really is the fact that I don't trust the medical profession and I don't trust the government. And I see the government expanding it to more and more people. And I see the organ harvesting and all that. And all that greatly concerns me, you know. And like she mentioned yesterday about these people in the nursing homes. She used to volunteer in nursing homes. So she's seen the state that some of these people are in. And she says, some of these people, they have no quality of life. They're just, staring at the wall, basically. They don't know where they are or anything. And she said, it'd be good, if they could just go through maybe and take some of those people out because they're no longer here anyway, really. And again, I can see her point, but it's like I said, well, yes, yeah, I understand, it makes sense. But I said then we get into an issue of consent, because if these people are that far gone, they're not able to consent. Like if you're in a state where you can't buy a car, buy a house, take out a loan, basically make a contract of any kind because you're incompetent, then you can't agree to assisted suicide because you're not competent. That means somebody has to agree on their behalf. Now, who wants to go through one of those places and decide who lives and who dies? Who wants to go through one of those places and decide who has quality of life and who doesn't? I certainly don't want to be the one to do it. So again, we get into an area of consent then. And if it's supposed to be about having autonomy and about making your own choices and so on, well, we're dealing with people who can't make their own choices. We're dealing with people who don't have autonomy. They really don't. They've lost their autonomy because they've become vegetables. So again, who's going to make that decision? It isn't going to be them that makes it for themselves. It's going to be somebody else. And that person's going to have to make a judgment as to what quality of life this other person has. And really, we don't know what goes on in the minds of these people who are kind of locked in or whatever, We really don't know what goes on in their minds. They might have a very rich life going on in their head that we don't know anything about, And maybe we should just let them have that, But who knows? Maybe not. I haven't been in that state myself, so I'm not in any position to speak on behalf of those who are, other than to say that it presents a huge ethical dilemma. Because, say, if I'm going to go in there as a 57-year-old man who still has most of my marbles, don't have much of my hair anymore, but I've still got most of my marbles, I hope, and I'm going to basically point and say, okay, you have no quality of life, away you go. You still have some quality of life, so we'll let you live. Well, I couldn't do that, that would be I just couldn't do it, because who am I to decide? And the thing is, it actually reminds me of what happened in Nazi Germany at the camps when the people would get off the trains and they'd be examined by the SS officers there and by the doctors there, and they called it the selection. Selections were made. Who's fit for work and who needs to go directly to the gas chamber? Who's just going to be a burden? Who can pull their weight in the camp and who can't, basically. That's what it boiled down to. If you can work and pull your weight, we'll let you live for now. If you can't, well, then off to the gas chamber with you. And it reminds me of that, the idea of somebody going through a nursing home and selecting who should live and who should die, you know, sending people either off to the right or off to the left. Anyway, yeah, it's not something I would want to be doing, to make those decisions. It's a pretty heavy thing, and it creates a huge, like I say, a huge ethical dilemma. So, yeah, I mean, you know, the other thing too is like people will often compare it to animals. They say, well, we put animals down. And yes, we do. But then we do that because humanity, for the most part, has decided that the life of an animal is worth less than the life of a human being. We've decided we are at the apex of the whole thing. We are the most valuable, and of course, this is due to the spirituality, because we are made in the image of God. That's the spiritual belief that mankind has held. Now, not everybody believes in God. I understand that, but traditionally, that has been the belief, and that's even why we can slaughter animals for food. I mean, every time you sit down and you eat a pork chop or a steak or a chicken breast, you're only able to do that because you've decided that the life of that animal is worth less than your own life. That animal gave its life so that you could be nourished to sustain your life. That must mean that that animal's life is worth less. And again, I don't like to think of it that way, because on Friday, I euthanized my best friend, Rocky, who's a cat, who's an animal. But the fact remains that biblically, we are told that the life of an animal is worth less than our life, that the human life is more precious than animal life, and that human beings have dominion over animals. Now, what I didn't do out of a belief that Rocky is less than I am. I did it out of love for Rocky. And I certainly didn't euthanize him so I could eat him or anything like that. That wasn't the case. But still, I eat meat. You've seen me here eating steaks, and chicken, and pork, and everything else. I go and buy the Wiener Schnitzel. That's pork. A pig had to give its life so that I could have that Wiener Schnitzel. When I eat a chicken, the chicken had to give its life. Cow gave its life so I could have that steak you saw me eating the other night. You know, I mean, so obviously I'm able to do that because I do believe that the life of an animal is worth less than the life of a human. And I mean, even Rocky's life, I think, was worth less than the life of a human being. And I say that I don't take it lightly saying that, but I say it because it's just a rule of nature. And it's also scriptural. But that doesn't mean that Rocky's life wasn't of great value to me. And I'll tell you, I would sooner have Rocky's companionship and company than a lot of people I know. There's a lot of people I know that if I see them somewhere, I'll turn and go the other way to avoid them, because I just can't deal. I can't deal with this person. Oh, that asshole again. You know, I think I'll go this way. I've done that many times. And I'm sure there's people who have done it with me too, because I know I'm not the best liked person in the world. But again, if we start to say, okay, the life of a human being is of no more value than the life of a cow or a pig or a chicken or a cat or a dog, well, then again, that changes a lot of things, and it makes it easier for the powers that be then to slaughter humans in the name of global warming, man-made climate change, or whatever. To say, well, they could end up putting a decree out saying, well, because the planet is boiling, because of all the people on it and so on, and all the pollution that the people create, we got to reduce the population. So for every year from now on, every government is going to have to say eliminate 15% of its population. And we've all the governments of the world have agreed to this by any means necessary. So it may be even that there'll have to be executions, that there'll have to be basically, you'll get a letter in the mail ordering you to attend the execution center, which will be a place where you will go to be put down for the benefit of the planet, and telling you a date and a time that you're required to be there. And if you don't show up, then they'll send the police after you to forcibly take you to the execution center. When they find you, you become a fugitive. I mean, as soon as we go down that road where we say the human life is of no more value than the life of an animal, then we can start doing a mass call, you see. And what a dystopian nightmare that will be. So we got to be very careful about doing things and making comparisons that way, saying, well, you know, your life as a man or a woman is worth no more than the life of a cat or a dog or a gopher or a bear or whatever, you know, or a chicken or a cow, you know, because we can mass call those things. We did it recently in Canada here at an ostrich farm. They went and they killed all the ostriches there. That was a terrible thing. That was a terrible thing, and it was a corrupt thing, too. It was our government, once again, engaging in this, the most insidious evil imaginable. But, you know, we're not at the point yet where we're having like mass calls of human beings. But we may end up going there if we keep going down this road of saying that the life of an animal is no different than the life of a human, and vice versa. Anyway, what it comes down to is we're going down some pretty dangerous roads right now. We're going down a lot of untested and untried roads. We're relying on human nature to be far better than it actually is. Well, we do this. We're relying, you know, we're engaging in a lot of things where there's serious ethical concerns, or at least there should be. If there isn't, that in itself is disturbing. If the ethical concerns aren't there anymore, that's really disturbing. Because the ethical concerns should always be there when we're talking about life and death. And even with my Rocky, I fought tooth and nail to keep him alive until he was ready to go. And I was treated really badly by some people. While I did that, I was judged, and I was treated badly. But I did it because it wasn't Rocky's time yet. And I did value Rocky's life. Make no mistake about it, I did. But it wasn't time for Rocky to go. Rocky was on the downhill slide. I knew that. But he hadn't got to the point yet where it was time for him to go. Last Monday, the shit hit the fan. And it was time. And so that's why I agreed to it at that point. It was time for him to go, not because of any threats that were made against me that I was going to be charged and all that. That wasn't why it was time for him to go. I would have taken him, you know, if that woman had made those threats against me 6 months ago, I would have taken him out of there by force if needs be. I would have physically injured anybody who got in my way, and I would have went on the run with him. And I would literally have went on the run until the time came that he was ready to go, and then I would have made sure that happened. And then I would have came back and faced the music and probably ended up in jail for a long time. But I was willing to do that if that's what it came down to. Luckily, it didn't come down to that. It was just a lot of judgment and a lot of snarkiness and a lot of nastiness, really, by certain people at the clinic. But the only reason I agreed to it on last Monday, and we set the date for Friday, is because I was in agreement with them at that point that it actually was time. That's the reason that I agreed to do it. So, like I say, I kept Rocky alive, despite these people really pushing for him not to be alive anymore, because I did value his life, I really did. But even so, I can't say that his life was worth the same as a human being's life, because I know that biblically that isn't true, and I know traditionally that isn't true. And if Rocky's life is worth the same as any human life, then that means I can't ever eat meat again, because as an animal, if his life is worth as much as mine or yours, well then why wouldn't the life of a cow or a pig or a chicken be worth as much? Because they're animals too, eh? So again, it comes down to that. At some point, you have to look at things realistically. And that's another way that we're falling. And that's one of the reasons that society is going the way it's going, because we're not looking at things realistically. If we're going to have this MAID program in this country, then it needs to happen under very, very tight control. And basically, it has to be written in stone. These are the only circumstances where this can ever happen, and under no circumstances other than this may this happen. And that has to be written in stone. It can't be changeable. It can't be that, oh, well, maybe we'll include this one or that one now. Maybe we'll do this or that. Maybe we will use it as a cost-saving measure, which the government is doing now. Make no mistake about that. That is happening. Because there are people who really didn't want MAID and didn't need it. All they needed was a little help. All they needed was a wheelchair ramp at their house, or a wheelchair, or to have a vehicle modified so they could get around, or maybe they needed some physiotherapy so that their limbs didn't atrophy. Maybe they needed some nursing care. Maybe they needed somebody to come in and, help them with certain things that they're not able to do for themselves anymore. And instead, they're offered MAID as a cost-saving measure. That has happened. So, again, we can't use death as a cost-saving measure. That's insanity. It's the sort of thing a serial killer would do. We can't do that. It's dehumanizing, and it's immoral, and it's just wrong in every respect. And the thing is, it comes from the spirit of Antichrist. That's where that comes from, that sort of thing, when we start saying we're going to start getting rid of people because these people are costing too much money. That's the spirit of Antichrist at work there. We got a God who actually went to the cross for us, who actually valued us so much that he forfeited his own life for us. There's a great deal of symbolism in that, the way it happened and what happened. Plus, he died the death of a criminal. He died a death which would be the death of somebody who was regarded in that society as a cursed person. In that society, if you were hanging on a cross, people would say, God has turned his back on you because you are such a bad person. So see, there's a lot of symbolism there in the way that Jesus died. Jesus died a death that was reserved for the worst people, for the worst sinners. And who did he do that for? He did it for sinners. which is all of us, really. But he died a death that was reserved for the worst sinners, you know? So, I mean, if he died, if he went to the cross and died a death that's reserved for the worst sinners, what that means is that all the rest who aren't the worst sinners, if he did it for the worst, he did it for all of us, you know? But that's what it was. It was to say everybody's included. This sacrifice is for everybody. There's no cutoff. It isn't like, okay, well, all I did was lust after a woman, and maybe I fornicated a few times, and maybe I told a few lies. And so I'm not as bad a sinner as that other guy that was committing adultery and that, was cheating people in business deals all the time and stuff like that. And therefore, Jesus, saved me, but he can't save that guy. No, Jesus saved the very worst of the worst, even. No matter how bad a sinner you are, the sacrifice was for you as much as it was for anyone else. I mean, think of the worst person you can think of in your mind. Even somebody like Adolf Hitler. Even for somebody like him, that sacrifice was made. Now, whether he accepted it is another matter, because again, you got to accept it. Jesus don't impose anything on anybody. You have to accept it. Jesus says, here, I'm giving you this gift, and you're perfectly free to return it unopened, if that's what you choose to do. And many people do that, But the thing is, and I would think that Hitler would be one of those people, I would imagine at least, that did that returned the gift unopened with the bowl all still nicely tied on the top of it and everything. But, there are some that tear that wrapping paper off and they grab that thing and they hold it tight to their chest and they say, thank you. This is exactly what I need. Thank you. But again, it's up to us. That's all. It's just up to us. But again, what it comes down to is, Jesus did that for humanity. Jesus didn't do that for the animals. The animals don't require that sacrifice because they're not fallen. They're in a fallen world, which is because of what we have done. We're the fallen ones, not the animals. The animals don't require a sacrifice like that. And that's even why animals were used as sacrifices before Jesus' sacrifice. Animals stood in for Jesus until Jesus came and made the sacrifice. That's how it is. Anyway, bottom line is, my concerns about the MAID program are actually due to the fact that I know human nature. I know human nature only too well. And I know what power does to people. I know that only too well. There's very few people can handle it, really. And the thing is, I also know about money and the effect money has on people. And, there's just too much incentive there and there's too much possibility for things to go wrong. And I'm seeing that happen in real time here in Canada now. And I think it's only going to get worse the longer it goes on. So like I say, unless we have some very clear guidelines that are written in stone, and it's a very small group of people who are eligible for this thing, and it's only done, in the most desperate, worst situations. Only then could I ever be behind it. And even then, I'd be behind it with reservations. Anyway, that's it. We'll talk to you later.